I guess for starters, what do you like to be called? Do you like to be called
Just Lady Pink.
Lady Pink? And like
my friends just call me Pink.
Pink.
So you
Okay.
could just do that.
Okay, awesome. All right, Pink. Where did you find the inspiration for that name?
Um, a friend of mine gave it to me, decided that those letters were much better to work style from, and they wanted to be known as the only group in the city that had a female in it. So Pink is as feminine as you get.
Yeah. Pink is my favorite color, as you can probably tell. But
Well,
yeah,
it's grown on me.
right. Did it not start out as?
No, I'm not. No, it's not my favorite color. I like purple, but purple is it's a much longer word to write. So I went with it. Pink was good for letter style, and we're very heavily into fonts and letters and style. Graffiti writers. Okay, the short history of graffiti in New York, it started in the late 60s on the streets, and by the early 70s, it went right onto the subway trains. And it was all executed by small crews of painters. And from then on, they were called just crews. So you belong to a crew, no more of like 3 to 5 people. Any more than that, you make too much noise when you're trying to sneak in. So small groups were the norm, and they would go out and specifically go to bomb the New York subway trains. We called it bombing, but it was
Right.
painting. And it started in the early 70s, and I came in by the 1979, when there was already a long history of what teenagers had done on the subways, including top to bottom whole cars and entire trains, 10 whole cars pulled out together. So it was always many rivalries between crews from different boroughs, from Brooklyn and the Bronx and Queens. And these were people who never even met, young teenagers, but you'd see each other's work and they were like, oh no, they didn't do that, did they? It's so big. Now we have to do bigger, better, and stronger, and competition bred better work. By the time I came along in 79, there was already amazing deeds to keep up with. We were teaching master to apprentice. So when I came in, yes, I had a bunch of different masters teaching me different things. I was down with a lot of different crews, different groups of painters, Black guys from the Bronx, white guys from deep Queens, Latin dudes from Brooklyn, and so on. I went to paint with different groups. Yeah.
How would you even keep track of like who was tagging what? Like, and these were trains, I'm assuming, that were just sitting in the stations, like, obviously they're not in motion, but
And there
at
are subway
odd hours.
yards. There are subway yards and they're at the ends of most cities,
Right.
at the edges of the cities, let's say in the worst neighborhoods ever. So they park the trains and also in elevated spots, and in deep in the tunnels, they park them as well. So they're parked all over the place. So like commandos or military troops, we find out where they're hiding, how to get in, how to sneak in, like shadows or like ninjas, or so this was very organized stuff that teenagers did. There's hierarchy, there's protocol, there's convention, there's all kinds of things you had to learn. And you start off by being an amateur, low on the totem. There are masters, there are legends, there are heroes, they're like celebrities. And I quickly became one of the celebrities because of lack of competition. I was the only female at the time. But in the early 70s, all through the 1970s, there had been other girls that painted. Dozens of girls all over the city, they painted. But the shelf life for a graffiti writer, an active kid running around painting all over, is 2 to 5 years.
Right.
And then they grow up, move on, get a job, get a life or something. You can't keep up, vandalism on a whole scale like that for very long.
Right.
So there had been a lot of girls, but they'd stop and they didn't do any more than tagging. If you're not major scale, colorful pieces, just simple stuff and getting up and tagging with your buddies. And we all did it just for the fun of it, for kicks and giggles and adventures with your friends and things like that. Out of boredom, what else is there to do? So you go out and tag up and write on walls, and suddenly it became a subculture. It became a culture that you strived into. It became like a guild. So you had to be accepted, you had to be invited in, you had to be taken there. You can't just stumble into places. You had to be down and know the right people, go to the right places. So if you're down with the right people, they know when to go, where to go, so that there's no incidents like getting arrested or anything. So there's a lot to that world, underground world. There's a great documentary called Style Wars. It was made in the early 1980s, funded by PBS. And filmed by a couple of dear friends that we trusted. So we took them to, they got taken to underground and hidden spots, and they got to see some of the amazing work that teenagers did. And they invented this. And this was the beginning of street art. And now street art is all over the world, everywhere.
I feel like it's something that people don't think of as having its own hierarchy or even infrastructure of, I mean, even just knowing that it is, you know, like, as you said, like vandalism, quote unquote, but I mean, to know that there was like structure even when you work, because like how old were you even when you got started?
I started at 15. By 16, I was on the subway trains.
Right. So even having just that like leveling up and getting on those different levels, like that's so just like fascinating to hear that like that had its own set of rules and apprenticeships and
it still does. It all still applies. Yeah.
How have you seen like painting murals and tagging, like it's become just a bit more like commercialized? Like I know there's parts of Soho that are sanctioning artists and things like that too.
So we are talking about two different things.
No.
Right. So that we're talking with the vandalism we did on the subways stayed as pure vandalism. No one got paid for any of that. Right.
Yeah.
And then by 1989, the subway trains were all cleaned off. There was no more graffiti on the subway trains, and everything went above ground. And that's when the murals started to appear. And those were easy enough to do with getting permission from a landlord. And then you had a free spot. And suddenly everyone was giving out free spots, and landlords realized that they could battle this graffiti nonsense they've had on their building for ages by hiring professional graffiti writers to do something beautiful.
Right.
So we got handed walls left and right all over the place, and we're just putting up murals. The owners didn't need to see or approve a design. They weren't giving us money. We would hit them up for, like, if the wall was really big, for just a few $100s to cover like the renting of a scaffold so that we could get bigger. And then we bring our own paint, invite our own friends, and paint stuff for fun. It was painting murals recreationally. Right. So that is the difference between a professional muralist and a street artist. We just need permission, and we don't need anyone to approve the design or anything. There's no money exchanged usually. We fund ourselves, so we have full creative control. Once people start throwing you money, then they start taking a little bit of control. They like want their logo, they want something for their shop. They're like, okay, oh no. Then it's no longer just, your fun piece. Right. So then it's a commission job, and I do plenty of those. And those involve invoices and budgets and owner approving a design or asking for revisions, and it's all good. You're paying loads of money for this, and I'll change it until you're happy, and then this gets painted up. And that this is your vision, not mine. So what I'm being paid for when it's a commission job, and that's the difference. When you're a street artist, you don't need anyone's approval. Most landlords that give you their walls do ask for you not to do anything controversial or political or religious or nothing crazy, because they have to live there, their neighbors live there. They just want something fun and pretty. That's all they know, and they want it for free. So you. So then,
and they would you say that they want more of like the artist's like individual voice?
They just want something pretty and non-controversial. Just cover up that graffiti nonsense with something, and that's all they want. They're not, I don't usually take too many requests of what it is that they do want, not too much. I'm sometimes very sensitive to the neighborhood though, so I'll try to give them something appropriate. Let's say if I'm painting in Kingston, New York, I'm painting a store that is owned by Ecuadorians, but they sell all Mexican stuff, Mexican food. So I painted a mishmash of South American and Mexican, Central American, and a little tiny bit of Spain there at the end with their missionaries and ships. But anyway, I gave them something that they would like and it would be appropriate, and it was fun for me to do. So I am sensitive to the neighborhoods. I'd like to say that in some cases, if I'm well paid and if it's a particular project, I will open a dialogue with the locals and speak to them, take in ideas so that we paint something pretty for them. But then that's usually something that is funded. And then I will take a little extra time out and do some more, work than just painting the wall, but actually talking to people.
Who were your biggest inspirations, like when you were first starting out, or when you were like, okay, I'm sort of starting to understand how to do this
There
more?
was a hierarchy there, and the best of the best guys were already in their early 20s when I was starting, and they were already in the galleries, starting to do galleries. And they've invited me to be in their galleries. So the first shows and sales I had was at the age of 16. I was that young, and the older guys were asking me to be down with them. And this was people like Lee and Crash and Days and Zephyr, Dandy, Futura. These are guys who are all legendary. And I was just honored to meet them. And then I had to paint with them and exhibit with them. And I had to get good really, really, really fast because those guys were amazing. They already did giant whole cars and amazing trains, and they were the kings of the kings, and everyone treated them like celebrities. And then I got to be down with them and hang out with them and travel with them. And I ditched my little teenage friends real quick in preference of those boys because they were older, they had cars, they had money, they had apartments, they were grown-ups. They were much more fun to hang out with and see the world and travel. And there was, in the early 80s, there was a whirlwind of activity. There was documentaries and books and films and traveling and exhibits and galleries and museums and so much going on. And I got to be down with these guys as the token female because there was no other females. So they literally came to my high school to get me. And I was the token female. I knew I was the token female, and I was willing to, play along as much as I could. Money was rolling in, people, there was nightclubs and parties in rich people's homes and liquor and drugs at my age. They're just giving it to us. And suddenly I'm at a party with Andy Warhol and Keith Haring and Basquiat. And, I did a lot of hanging out with those guys. So, this was amazing at 17 and such. And I didn't have time for my senior year of high school. I took my GED exam and I was done. I was booked up with traveling and exhibits and things. I didn't have time for high school. I had a life.
Where did you go to high school?
I went to the High School of Art and Design, and that's in Midtown Manhattan. And that's for like talented kids from all over the city.
Those guys, some of these bigger names that were already getting gallery work, how you say they went to your high school and they found you? Were you already?
One of them, Crash, came down. He was the curator of the first exhibit at Fashion Moda in the South Bronx, and that was a launching pad for many other exhibits and such. He came all the way to my high school to get me. Like I went to school with one of a little neighbor of his that knew me and so on. And so and they're still all dear friends today.
Wow. That's amazing. Wow. So you were already working. I mean, you went to the High School of Art and Design, so you were already painting.
I was majoring in architecture.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know. So my real dad in Ecuador was an architectural engineer, and I have two half brothers in Ecuador now who are architectural engineers now. They build buildings and complexes and stuff, and I just do little murals.
Yeah.
Architecture was in my blood, and then you can still see it in my artwork today. I do like fantasy architecture. There's a lot of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Some of these images that stuck out to me, I think particularly just the death of graffiti and manic depression.
That was my very first brush painting at 16.
Yeah.
Self-taught.
Wow,
Yes,
yeah.
self-taught. I wasn't taking painting classes. I said I was taking architecture, was drafting and mathematics and things like that, So that is all self-taught. And I don't know where it came from. What I usually say that we are usually channeling a dead artist.
Right.
So maybe I'm channeling Frida, I'm channeling somebody. And
I can see that.
It all just comes through. So it isn't, I don't know where talent comes from or that skill, and why can't everybody do it?
Right.
I don't know. So it's perhaps where we have access to, so the iCloud of skills and such, of knowledge, and when we're in an alpha state, we can channel other artists.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. That's really, I mean, that's a really, I mean, I'm just starting out, I feel like, finding more and more my own like artistic voice. And like lately I'm thinking so much about like my ancestors and like how they are encouraging me in some way. So it's really interesting to think about, like thinking about art and thinking about creating art in the tradition of people that came before you. So it's almost like what you're, similar to what you're saying, where it's like I have a say, or I have talent, but I'm also transmuting the things that.
Could be, could be, what is it, ancestor memory, or it could just
Yeah.
be access to the, like, the iCloud of all knowledge and all things, and there's been many great people who have had said they had access to that, from Einstein to Tesla to, and many other artists. The Akashic records, I think is called,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. So who knows where it comes from? So if you overthink it, you fuck it up. So
Exactly.
you do have to just, flow with it. Let your hand do what it's gonna do.
I mean, with some of these pieces, there's such a distinct sense of like the city. And that's really, I mean, really just deep, I guess, to think of using the collective consciousness or the shared experience as the thing that's like moving your hand or helping you paint, right?
Uh-huh.
And I wonder like how much of your own, how much do you connect when you're painting with your own identity or a sense of self, or your own story?
No,
I don't
I
know.
do so many pieces of art. I can't even, think like that. It's not,
Uh-huh.
I don't overanalyze, any of the stuff that I'm doing. So no.
Right. You're never like, this thing happened to me, I'm going to make a painting about, you know what I mean? Like,
I'm not that calculated, not so much.
wow. So you met up with Andy Warhol, Basquiat, Crash. Was there any specific person that who was a person that you apprenticed with, or who you?
Well, I did collaborations with Jenny Holzer, and she is one of the top 5 female artists of the US altogether.
Right.
She's absolutely amazing. She was a street artist. She put up posters with truisms. That's like 1 line or 2 line statements that are like, full of power and insight and such. She's amazing. So I did very large scale paintings, and she wrote her truisms through them. So
Mm-hmm.
something she would ponder on the image and then put something fitting to the image and her truisms. And our paintings have circulated the world, and are now sitting in MoMA. It's sitting in
Mm-hmm.
Tate Modern. We have work all over the place. And just earlier this year, a few months ago, we sold a piece. Oh no, that was something else. And we're at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston.
Mm-hmm. Oh, awesome. Yeah, I've been there.
There as
Cool.
well. So Jenny Holster, huge influence. We did some bit of collaborating, and I was like all of 2021, something like that. I was 19, and she would have me up to her studio. She would prepare these big canvases, and she'd make me paint something. So I've got an assistant now, and I'm doing that to him too.
Nice.
Because if someone don't force him to do that, it's not going to get done. So sometimes you got to help these kids, have to help a grown up help focus you to what's really important. Because when you're that young, you don't realize that this is important at all.
Mm-hmm.
It looks a little stupid. Why are you doing it? So,
Right,
to
right.
grown up to make you realize that, yeah, that this is really important and this is good. So I'm doing that to my young assistant as well, making him come over
Yeah.
and continue working on a painting, and and it's coming out amazing. So it's working out. And I had an interview with Jenny Holster just a few weeks back, and we were reminiscing about all of this. And I was like, yeah, I remember that. It was you that was making me come down or downtown to the city and paint on those big canvases. And if it hadn't been for her forcing me, sure, I was doing an occasional painting in my mother's backyard, because spray paint you got to do outdoors, you know, but not on this scale. The pieces that I did with Jenny, really big ones, 10 by 10, 9 by 9 feet, really big pieces.
I feel like you rarely see that in any other art form, of having the direct like apprentice or mentor mentee relationship. That, I mean, I act as well as, you know, everything else, but it's so rare to just have that one-on-one person. Like, you go to class because you know you're supposed to go to class, but then it's a group of people, and it's in an office building, or it's in a classroom. And I feel like that's just something you don't really see with any other art form.
Funny. That is funny though, but I've always mentored. I've always had a young person, and I have 3 assistants now, and 2 of them I'm mentoring, a boy and a girl.
Right.
She has graduated from college, and she's got a degree in fine arts, and she can paint very well, but all still needs polishing up. And there's nothing like practice, practice, practice. And so she's wonderful with a brush, not so good with spray paint. So she still has to learn that. And she can't help me on the big murals until she gets better with spray paint. So she needs more opportunities to practice and practice that, translate what you know that you can do with a brush real small into giant scale. Now, is this the same thing you're doing, just bigger and with spray paint? So that can control and all of that, she is still learning, while the boy picked it up real quick. I got him right out of high school at 18. And within 2 months, I sent them to do a 2-story mural with me in Sweden. So, you know,
nice.
And then a couple months after that, we were doing an 8-story mural in the Ukraine, up on these giant cranes that go like that. And the kid was fearless. And by then he could fill in real well and paint real well. And young people learn quick, and they get good quick. So he's been quite helpful. But he decided to not go to college. So I am slaving him and making him work. So you wanted to be a grown-up, huh? So he's been working with me now for 3 years, and I'm still mentoring him and shaping him into a fine young man. And hopefully I'm sending him, and those two young people, their ages 21 and I think 22, for their first commission to do a restaurant down in Brooklyn.
Right.
Okay, it's a big responsibility. But I think they're ready. So for all of these things, teaching them how to do not only just street art and amazing work out there on the street in front of everyone, they're looking at you, and you got to do something amazing real quick, to a commission job that is going to help them earn money later on down the road by using their skills and knowledge of how to hustle to get jobs and get work.
That's so extra, because like I'm sure it must be so helpful, and like I know it is, because I've also experienced it in different ways in my life too. When you have, I think, the adult or the more experienced person who, you know, not only sort of throws you in the deep end of the pool and is like, okay, you have to do this. Like, doesn't matter what you do, just do it. And then, but then they're also, you know, scaffolding in your way of creating not just your voice, but your whole work ethic, you know?
Yes. That is one thing that a lot of artists lack. And that is a struggle I always have, is discipline and work ethic and that. But when there's deadlines and promises made, you got to do what you said you promised to do and such, no matter how long it takes, how painful it is. You promised, you've committed. And so it takes a lifetime of learning that and getting that straight. So, you know, there is that.
So,
I mean, I also do work with teenagers. I get an art education grant, and I paint large murals with teenagers. Like really big walls, and I get these teenagers right out of art school, still 16, 17, and I give them a wall that's 3 times their height and tell them, here you go, paint this. And so, like, throwing them in the deep end of the pool, exactly. And they always land on their feet. They always step up. They already know how to paint. They understand this. They just doing it on a bigger scale in the street, where folks will walk up and give you instant approval, and strangers, not just your family and your teachers, but you know, we're using their skills in real life application by leaving behind a permanent mural in their neighborhood. And that goes a long way. So yeah, I do love working with our teenagers and kids and doing and paying it all forward or going around and you know how I started. Grown-ups took me seriously, so I do the same thing for young people. I take them seriously.
What role did your family or your upbringing play into your interest in art or your interest in painting at all?
Well, my mom always nurtured my instinct to draw and paint since I was a very little kid. Buying me, you know, paint by numbers and all kinds of artistic things since I was a very little kid. I was always drawing. And in middle school, my art teacher insisted I do a portfolio so that I
Mhm.
can get into art high school and so on. They already saw how talented I was at such a young age. So they nurtured that. But when I
Mhm.
started sneaking out the window and going to the worst neighborhoods of the city with a bunch of handsome young men in the middle of the night, no support there. Yeah, no, my mother would stay up all night crying, waiting up for me. And so I'd try to sneak back in the house in the dark, creeping in like this. And then like, you wouldn't even see it coming. And, you know, she'd be waiting for me. She knew where I was out doing, but she was, you know, pretty much hoping that I was only painting with all these young men in the middle of the night somewhere,
Right.
you know. But she worried. She didn't know where I was. She was always expecting a call from the police or the ambulance or the hospital or worse, you know. She was
Mhm.
always in fear. She was trying to always get some boyfriend of mine to take control of me, like Latin men do. She was trying to get me married off to a boyfriend, and so that they can take control of me. But there was no controlling of me. No, I was completely out of control. I was a grown up at 15, at 16, going off on trips by myself with my friends. There's an exhibit in New Orleans, Mom. I'll be gone for a week. I wasn't asking for permission. I was just letting her know where I was going to go. You know.
Right, right. And at the very and she at the very least would be like, I hope it's just painting. I hope it's just art that's going on with these guys.
Yes, yes. So didn't have very much control of me. You know, she
Mhm.
was even hoping to ship me back to Ecuador to my father that she left and never spoke to again until she had to call him and say, "Your daughter's out of control. I'm gonna send her down to Ecuador." And I swore I would run away if they tried to put me on an airplane and ship me back to
Wow.
the old country. I was not having that.
Right.
So, you know, I was doing well. They supported me when I was exhibiting. At that young age, I had exhibit after exhibit. My stepfather would drive my paintings to different galleries on the top of the car, tied
Mhm.
down with blankets and rope, really big paintings, but they
Yeah.
sit on top of the car. And he would drive them to galleries and they'd come to the openings. They didn't understand all the weird people coming to the galleries and all those artists and such, but they were supportive. They were wonderful. They and still
Mhm.
are. My mom still is. She loves all the books and magazines and anything that I'm in, she collects, she loves to see. They're very proud of me. But no, they didn't approve of any of that vandalism. No, no mother would. And I've been asked if I had a kid that age, what would I do?
Mhm.
Besides break her legs, I think find some therapy. And they make medication for kids like that now. So I don't know.
Yeah, the whole thing has changed.
No, but honestly, I've been married 27 years and we didn't do kids. I married the
Mhm.
graffiti writer and he traumatized two mayors in New York City. Yeah, he was a bad boy. So there's a reason why we didn't have children.
Right, right. That's good. Yeah, no, sometimes I think when you make that decision of like, actually, I'm not going to pass all of this on to an unsuspecting person.
And besides, I've been married to my career and
Yeah.
creating art. I didn't want to stop to be mommy,
Yeah.
although my husband had said that he would stop to be mommy. And he's been my executive assistant all this time. So he is what makes me a success and what makes my art possible. He's my rock. He's my
That
administrative
support.
assistant. He makes all of this stuff run smoothly and helps with the assistants and everything. And so, you know, without him, God, if we'd have had little kids, oh no. I'm also not fond of babies or little small children. I know it's a tough thing to hear, but it's
No,
just they
I
scare me.
I don't think
They
so.
scare me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think it's good to know. I think I respect it when people say it's not really for me, it's not my thing. And then it's like, okay, then that's something that you know for yourself and then you don't
And
have to
it's also like for most women, that you are not a valid woman unless you become a mother.
Oh,
Are you
yeah.
only to breed the babies? Is that our lot in life? So my mother would go on and on. Where is the grandchildren coming? When is the grandchildren coming? My sister gave her a granddaughter. So, but she kept at it and at it until I had to yell at her to stop it. I am not having children. You're not getting a grandkid from me. So stop it now. I have chosen to do artwork and leave paintings behind. That is going to be my immortality. See,
Yeah.
my paintings sit in museums. They will be preserved for future generations. I have more to contribute to this world than just making another little copy of myself. That
Right.
kind of vanity stops right here. I have paintings, I have talent, I can do that. So,
Yeah.
you know, if you want to leave behind a little copy of yourself, that's all fine. And that is a natural instinct that all, you know, living beings have. You got to procreate, you got to leave behind
Sure,
the
sure.
continuation of your species. It's in our DNA, of course. But you know, not all women have to succumb to that. We are
No.
not just valid as in our womanhood if we have children. That's nonsense. So, you know, if you have more to contribute, you do that.
And I think it's also what, I think what you're saying, what I'm hearing from you is like, it's not really like who you are. Like who you are is like your paintings, and that is your, what you were saying, like your legacy, your life's work, that is your like identity. And that's, I think knowing that is so much more helpful to yourself and also to society, to just say like, okay, being a mother is who I am, or but not being a mother is who I am. And it isn't even like a not, it's more just like, this is what I'm bringing to the table. Like, this is what I'm bringing to the shared experience. If someone wants to bring a child, that's fine. But this is what I'm bringing. And I think that's so much more helpful to you and to everyone else to know that, as opposed to like trying to force yourself into something that you're not,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, which
Absolutely.
many women do too. And I feel like many Latin women do too. And that doesn't help anyone, so it's like,
So it's tough. There's a lot of women who are afraid to stand up for themselves that way, and
yeah,
they'll just, you
yeah,
know, read a bunch of little rugrats that they neglect later on. So, you know, hey, just contribute something else, find something else that you can do,
yeah.
than to contribute to the overpopulation of this world, because that is an issue.
Yeah,
Overpopulation, we're not keeping up.
right, every day. Yeah, sometimes I'll go on that website that shows the population going up every day, and I kind of look at that and I'm like, and then I click on
Um,
something else.
Even like 30 years ago, I did a painting like that of a white woman and a white kid starving when they're walking away all skinny. And it's called overpopulation. This has been an issue for a long, long time. So, you know, we don't need to contribute to that carbon footprint.
Right, yeah, yeah. The woman and the child walking away, and there's, yeah, and it's like, you
And
got
they're
the woman
blonde,
with the
you know,
child.
but they're,
Right.
so, you know,
Yeah. What does that say? Like
yeah.
that it almost doesn't even matter like who you are. If there's too many of us, then it doesn't really help the collective. I feel like that's what we keep talking about.
Yeah, I do watch a lot of sci-fi and fantasy. So some of
Oh,
those apocalyptic scenarios are in my artwork and
yeah.
such, for sure.
Well, it's these days especially, it always feels like it's just around the corner, I feel
Yeah,
like it's just,
yeah, it's surreal.
yeah.
The world is weird, but I do live in the country, so I've been isolated for a long time now. I've been up here for about 8 years, away from the city, away from people. I'm nowhere near anyone. So this pandemic hasn't affected me that much, and surprisingly, I've still been overbooked and overworked, and with projects and exhibits and everything. It doesn't hasn't slowed down for me at all.
Wow.
In this pandemic, so it's incredible.
Has I guess, I mean, I know painting is a bit more of a, can be a more solitary work, but has the pandemic affected, or have you seen that sort of come into your work in any way? Just,
Um, Not the pandemic per se, but I did get a lot more uh, studio time and less traveling last year. Usually I'm traveling, you know, quite a bit all over the world, and this time I had to stay put and paint more long-term projects and intense paintings because I was staying put for a while, or something like that. But there was a lot of exhibits and shows and all kinds of traveling things that were canceled all of last year. So
Right.
I got to do a lot more artwork, staying put.
Yeah. What do you think that, you know, you can speak to this in as much as like fine art or visual art, or all artists, but what do you think our focus should be on right now as artists? Like if you could say, you know, what should we really be trying to do with our work, either as painters or as muralists or just anyone who really maybe even has a platform?
Well, because it is a platform for your voice, say something important.
Mm-hmm.
So I am not a big fan of just doing decorative work,
Right.
just stuff for, you know, being pretty. And I mean, I will do that, some of that. And, you know, I'm not completely against it, but not all the time. I do use my voice. When I'm doing research on feminism, I find my own work in there. I find me in there. Okay. Activism, I find my work in there. So use your voice to say something important if given the opportunity. Champion a cause, you know, bring attention to something. And of course, you can't fix the world, and one painting isn't going to change the world, but you can start a conversation. You can bring attention to an injustice. You can stand for a cause. You know, there's a lot of things out there that are universally everyone can agree with. You know, clean up the oceans. Like, we love peace, not war. You know, there's like voting rights is important, and suppressing them is not. These are clear right, wrong issues.
Yep.
That you can champion. And then there are more subtle issues, you know. So if you have a platform, you have a voice, use it. You know, if you can paint stuff in the street and you can't do a blatant political or social statement like that, do it subtly. Do it subtly, you know. Things of that nature. And then mentor and support other artists. So don't be selfish with your gift and your talent. And, you know, if you hire young people to help you, to encourage them, there is nothing more than them meeting a real live artist, and that it will inspire them to continue to be artists. It's very hard to be an artist. Life of an artist, it's not easy. So we got to support each other, encourage each other. And that comes from our graffiti roots. We're just a great big tribe or clan or something like that. We all give each other support. Or we're a big dysfunctional family. We don't all like each other, but, you know, the support is there, and such. And wherever you go, you got family. And that's always cool. So as if you're an artist, you're family. And we want to help you and support you and give you advice and anything from how to use the paint to your legal rights in such situation and what you should do. Any of these advice helps. Anything. It's, you know, you meet new people and you want to tell you, friends can tell you if they're on the up and up or if they're thieves and scoundrels, and, you know, any advice helps. So you support other artists and help other artists. And that's always, you know, important. But if you got a platform, you got a voice, use it for good, not evil.
Yeah, that's such a great way of putting it. I love how you said, like, I see, or I find my work in feminism or in activism. It's like you go to these movements or
Now,
these
like in
issues.
researching in Google,
Yeah.
researching imagery in Google and stuff like that, I found my own work in there.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Like you literally find it, and then it's like you also, but it's for everyone in that sense. And then also, paying it forward with.
I guess I am that. So a feminist, an activist. I use my voice for political. You know, I did a big fat Donald Trump. I did a little monkey that was George Bush. I did a little all out in the street, out there for everyone to see. I put, like, when I can get away with it, I will be more bold. I will be in your face. This is what I mean. And, you know, and if I have to go subtle, I will do subtlety. But, you know, if you have a voice, by all means. In most freedom and that I have for my voice are art spaces, not just straight up in the street. Like I said, landlords want you to be decent and proper, but in a gallery or a museum, or if the wall is owned by an art space, then you can get wild and woolly and say what you need to say. within reason, be sensitive to a community wherever you're putting it. So I find that some artists are not as sensitive, and they'll just slap up something horrendous and they don't care. And, that's just wrong. That's just wrong. You have to be respectful. If you want to do horrendous stuff, do it in the middle of the night anonymously. But if you're doing it in straight up broad daylight, you have to be respectful to the neighborhoods, please.
Right, right. Yeah, you're not there to harass the people that live there visually, right?
Yes,
Like, yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Like I'm painting with a group of friends across from a high school, and one of them is painting a kid holding a gun in a joint. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
really? Do you see the high school across the street?
Yeah.
How did you not see it? It's the entire block long. And, and this is what you're painting. Change that. Change that. He's holding a lollipop. No more joint. Come on.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
It,
yeah.
so
Yeah, yeah.
sense. He came from a different neighborhood and didn't have any sense. So,
Yeah. I feel like that's something that we're all starting to, well, not starting to, but I feel like that's a process of an artist of like, understanding that you have a voice and just being like, I'm gonna do me and all that, but then also understanding that your actions and your voice doesn't occur in a vacuum, and that those actions and voices have consequences on other people.
yeah. Yeah.
I mean, context. Well, it was an honor to talk to you. This was a great conversation. Great to listen to you.
Well, thank you so much. Good questions. I'm afraid I couldn't answer some of those Latin questions because I've lost touch.
Oh,
I've lost touch with my heritage, I'm afraid, and I'm surrounded by just white people. So
no, that's you are. This is absolutely like what our mission. I guess our mission in finding Quemoción was to say we come from all different shapes and sizes and backgrounds, and that includes maybe I have a different sort of relationship with my Latin identity that doesn't fall into that neat category, so that's not a problem at all.
But to be fair, today makes exactly 49 years that I've come to this country.
Oh, no way. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I was 7 years old when I came here. I assimilated into this culture over the years, so I lost touch with my heritage. I mostly just speak Spanish to my mom and occasional, other people, but it's mostly my mom who didn't learn any English really. So that's it.
Well, we're happy to have you, and New York is happy to have you. And, we are absolutely a Latin American company. So that's a huge part of what we do as well.
All right. Thank you for having me. So,
of course. Thank you so much, Pink.